Welcome to First. I'm Mark Eichman, along with Nichelle Polston and Shirley Min. DuPont is a company in transition. What will its future look like, and how does that impact Delaware? We'll put it in some context this week.
The plan to build a future for schools in Wilmington ran into a slight roadblock before the State Board of Education. We'll talk to one of the architects of the plan to see what's next.
And the building blocks for the future of some of those children in Wilmington can be found in a simple game of chess. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
This week, Delaware Governor Jack Markell releases his budget wish list for fiscal year 2017. We'll go over some of the highlights in a moment. In his State of the State address, he spent time talking about the changing economic picture and DuPont. First Look reports this week on what that change means for the first state in 2016 and beyond. This was DuPont. These powder mills once churned out gunpowder that helped win American wars and tamed the countryside in the Wild West. Nearby homes once housed hundreds of workers. Now they're all part of the Hagley Museum, commemorating the company's history. Not far away is DuPont's headquarters, here just west of Wilmington. Could this site become just another vacant monument to what once was? That possibility was one of the negatives Governor Markell discussed in his final State of the State address.
We are all well aware that recent announcements by DuPont have increased the challenges that lie ahead. We've long known that DuPont is changing, but that's no solace to our friends and neighbors affected by the company's significant cuts.
Those cuts, announced in December, include 1,700 Delaware workers who learned their fate right before the new year.
For centuries, DuPont has been a key reason that Delaware has been a hotbed of innovation, a leader among the states when it comes to patents and PhDs.
I certainly lament the employees that have lost jobs at DuPont.
If the fact that DuPont is leaving Delaware doesn't wake us up, I don't know what will.
Wake-up call or not, DuPont's merger with Dow may have surprised some, but for others, this was a long time coming.
It's not surprising at all. I mean, and this is business in the 21st century.
John Boyd heads the Princeton-based site selection firm, the Boyd Group. He says DuPont just wasn't operating as efficiently as it should be.
The chemicals industry is a very, very cost-conscious industry. DuPont is under enormous pressure to cut operating costs. And this merger with Dow is a way to do that, to eliminate a lot of redundant cost structures. And it's really in sync with what we're seeing in the industry.
Some of that cost-cutting pressure was applied last year by activist investor Nelson Peltz, seen here with former DuPont CEO Ellen Coleman, during their proxy fight for control of the company.
It set into chain this motion of events. It really accelerated a lot of the things that really needed to happen for the company to be viable and to be competitive in the 21st century.
I was waiting for a merger at some point. DuPont has been downsizing over the past few years quietly, but now this is a lot larger.
Villanova economics professor David Fiorenza says prospects are likely good for former DuPont workers.
I think we can see some silver linings in this, that some of the employees who work for DuPont, hopefully they'll be in demand because they're chemists, they're in the other fields that are high-paying jobs, and hopefully someone else would want to grab them.
But there's still another domino that could fall if DuPont spinoff Chemours leaves the state.
I think that's the next shoe that will drop. I think the strong contenders are South Jersey. The Grow New Jersey Fund is one of the most powerful incentive programs in the country. I think they're also going to consider alternatives in Pennsylvania.
The next question is, where will the merged Dow-DuPont keep its businesses located?
I think the company is committed to keeping its chemicals division here. The challenge, of course, will be to keep as much as the agricultural business as possible.
Earlier this week, DuPont announced its fourth quarter earnings for 2015. The company lost $253 million for the quarter. That's a big change from its profit of $683 million for the same time period in 2014. DuPont is still on schedule to cut more than $700 million in costs by the end of this year, in part through job cuts for about 10% of its workforce globally. DuPont currently employs about 60,000 people around the world.
So, Mark, tell me, what is the state doing to help Delaware workers who lost their jobs?
Well, the State Department of Labor will offer a rapid response team to help those who lost their jobs here locally. That help includes workshops on interview and job search skills. They'll also help connect workers to local and national companies based on their expertise. It should be noted that these employees let go by DuPont are really highly skilled scientists and others who have really technical skills that are in high demand. So it shouldn't really be a problem for those people to find jobs. The problem is for the state having to replace those good-paying taxable incomes if they move somewhere else. This has all provided some extra pressure on Governor Markell's budget team, which presented the spending plan for fiscal year 2017 on Thursday. Here are some of the highlights. At nearly $4.2 billion, Markell's final spending plan is the first in state history to top $4 billion. That represents a more than 5% increase over the current year's budget. The main increase in state spending is in health care for state workers, with an increase of $47 million in health care costs. To curb skyrocketing costs, employees will have to contribute more of their share of premiums. Employee contributions will increase by as much as $20 a month, depending on the plan. The state share of monthly premiums would increase by as much as $127 per worker. Markell's plan would also force new state workers into a health savings account instead of the HMO or PPO plans current workers receive. The budget also sets aside $6 million to implement recommendations from the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission. $4 million of that would help low-income students in the Red Clay School District. The other $2 million would establish the Wilmington Redistricting Fund to support continued transition.
Thanks, Mark. You can find more details on the governor's spending plan at newsworks.org/Delaware and on the radio on WHYY FM 90.9.
A group called the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission wants to remove the Christina School District from the city of Wilmington and give its students to the Red Clay School District. This would make Red Clay the dominant school district in a city that has been split 4 ways ever since the 1980s. The commission says this move would help create a more unified vision for city education and ultimately improve outcomes. The State Board of Education isn't so sure. Last week, they rejected that plan and asked for revisions. They're expected to take a second vote in mid-March. Our first person segment will discuss the merits of this much-debated redistricting plan. Dan Rich is the policy advisor for the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission. Welcome, Dr. Rich.
It's a pleasure, Robbie.
So let me start here. In your mind, how likely is it that we're going to see a redistricting proposal that goes through the legislature and is approved by the governor this term?
I think it's very likely. I think it's going to move forward. I think the State Board actually did not turn down the proposal. What they did is they didn't act on it. They said, well, we have more questions and we want to get more answers, which is fine. They're exercising due diligence to make sure that what we're doing is serving the best interests of the students. We have the same desire. So I think the reason that this is going to go forward is that there really is now a sense of urgency that something needs to be done. It's been over 60 years since the Brown versus the Board of Education decision, which was very important to Delaware because we had 2 cases that on which that was decided. And despite everything that's happened since, we still have thousands of children in the city of Wilmington. Most of them are black, brown, and poor, who don't have access to high-quality education. We know this is a problem. We know this has to change. The consequences of this are not just disastrous for those children and their families, but for the entire community. And I think that the best indicator recently of that is the report from the Center for Disease Control about what this means for the community.
I think a lot of people agree that there's a problem and improvements can be made. I don't know if everyone agrees on what the solutions should be. You guys have said that sort of a precondition for making things better in the city of Wilmington with regards to education is reducing the number of sort of cooks in the kitchen, reducing the number of districts who have some chunk of the students. Why is that so important? Because I think a lot of people see that as just sort of moving around deck chairs in the Titanic.
Sure. So we have a situation that no one intended, I don't expect, and no one planned. And I don't believe anyone looking at the city would design a public education system the way it is now, but it's evolved over a number of decades. Right now in the city of Wilmington, we have 17 different governing units. There's another 6 just surrounding the city. all of which together share responsibility for the education of about 11,500 students. They do that. They have no plan. They have no shared plan. They rarely collaborate with one another. There are really no requirements for them to coordinate what they're doing. So even when something good happens in one of those schools, it's almost impossible to scale it up to the community as a whole. Every group that's looked at Wilmington education since 2001, and we're the 5th group, has said that you've got to address the issues of governance. You need leadership in the city. We need a locus of initiative in the city, and that's what we're trying to achieve with redistricting.
But let me ask, though, I mean, right up the road, we have an example of this in Philadelphia. That's a unified school district, right? For a long, long time. They have, in different forms, sort of one voice speaking for all the students in Philadelphia. And yet that district struggles to remain solvent,
sure,
much less educated students, to adequately. What makes you think that if we had sort of one big tent in Wilmington, or maybe just a couple of big tents in Wilmington, that would make a huge difference?
Well, we're going to have multiple tents in Wilmington no matter what we do. We're not going to have just one big tent, and we're not proposing one big tent. We're proposing a leadership role for one of the districts, and we're also proposing doing away with a configuration of districts that no longer makes any sense. The Christina School District was not the product of any public policy decision in the state. It wasn't produced by referendum, nor were any of the other districts. It was imposed by the courts to achieve a certain kind of outcome, right? And it's one of 4 disconnected school districts in the country out of 14,000. It's disconnected by 18 miles of interstate highway, across which we send mostly kids from the city, right, to the suburbs, presumably for their benefit, but no demonstration of benefit. The justification for that district no longer applies. We think the district will be better served, and the children will be better served if it concentrates in the western part of the county. It'll still be one of the most diverse school districts in the state, and the Red Clay District would take responsibility for those schools and for those students. When that happens, Avi, the Red Clay School District will be responsible for a majority of the public education students in the city of Wilmington. So it will be the lead district. Now, that's just the first piece. You've got to also collaborate, right, among that district, other districts, charter schools.
We'll have to get more details later. You can find a lot more on your guys' website, Solutions for Wilmington Schools. Dan Rich, thank you so much for being here. He's the policy advisor for the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission. We really thank you for your time. We'll continue to follow this story on the pages of newsworks.org/Delaware.
Some other education ideas coming up on First. Johnny Means provides the student view of some of those Wilmington education reform efforts. He's also teaching life lessons through chess. And mural arts provide structure for one Sussex County school. First Experience comes up in about 10 minutes.
Election season is finally here, so we're going to have a different type of discussion on State of Play this week. We've invited Mary Bridget McManaman, a constitutional law professor at the Widener University Delaware Law School. Mary Bridget, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, Shirley.
Recently, you've received some attention for an op-ed you wrote that was published in the Washington Post, and it's entitled, "Ted Cruz is Not Eligible to be President." Now, just some background. Ted Cruz was born in Canada. His mother's a U.S. citizen. His father is not. But your argument is that Cruz is not a, quote, natural-born citizen. Explain your argument here, and why, in your opinion, does he not qualify?
Sure. The Constitution requires 3 things for a person to be president. You have to be 35 years old, you have to live here for 14 years, and you have to be a natural-born citizen. That's a term that comes from the old common law, which comes from England. And the Supreme Court says when there's a term in our Constitution from that law, you look to that law for the definition. And the definition is clear. You had to have been born in the territory of the sovereign to be natural-born.
And so, by that definition, he was naturalized at birth?
That's correct.
Therefore making him ineligible.
That's right.
Now, there were some researchers that published in the Harvard Law Review, the names, forgive me if I mispronounce them, Neil Catal and Paul Clement. They have a different interpretation of natural-born citizens. So what are they saying?
They're basing their argument on actually some other secondary sources that were written in the 20th century that looked at some 18th century British statutes. But they weren't adopted in the common law, and they didn't come to America. So they're relying on inaccurate sources.
So there was the whole birther movement with President Obama. There were some eligibility issues with Senator John McCain when he ran for president. Now, McCain was born in Panama, but why is your argument that you're raising with Ted Cruz different from the arguments that were raised with Obama and McCain?
Well, first of all, Obama was born in Hawaii, so,
right.
so there's no issue. With regard to McCain, he's another interesting wrinkle on this. Under common law, anyone born in a territory of England was also natural born. And so the argument would be that John McCain was born in what was then a territory of the United States. The problem is that the United States Supreme Court in the early 20th century was asked to say, were the children born in the Philippines and Cuba and Puerto Rico, which were our new territories, were they natural born? And the Supreme Court, in a series of horribly racist opinions, ruled that they were not because they were alien races. And so McCain's best argument, it never came to it, but right. McCain's best argument would have been those cases should have been overruled. He was born in a territory of the United States and therefore eligible.
So then how come Ted Cruz, I mean, given that I'm sure there are people who agree 100% with you, why is he still allowed to pursue this? Or is there something else in the works where you know, his run would be challenged?
Well, I think there are several suits out already, one in Texas, I know, and one in Illinois. I think that until a Secretary of State refuses to put him on a state ballot, I think he's just going to go forward as a practical matter.
Okay. Utah Senator Orrin Hatch, he proposed a bill in 2003, and what it would do is it would allow a citizen who has been in the country for more than 20 years to run for president. So is it that easy to clarify this issue? Just, you know, get this law passed and clear it up?
Well, my argument would be that no, that would be fine for a constitutional amendment, but that Congress can't on its own simply amend the Constitution. It would have to go through the entire amendment process.
And so you believe your interpretation is definitely the most accurate interpretation?
Yes. Besides, I don't know about you, but I know when I went to grade school, people were taught you have to be born in the U.S., and that got confirmed by reading the old law.
Donald Trump, you know, the Republican presidential candidate, he says that the Democratic Party will challenge Cruz's eligibility in court this fall. You know, is there enough of a legal precedent to do this?
There isn't any precedent because no presidential candidate has ever had that kind of a challenge before.
Right.
There is precedent of the definition of what a natural-born citizen is, but I have to admit that the Supreme Court is a little bit unpredictable, and I don't know for sure what would happen if it ever got that far.
So before now, we have never had any sort of real challenge to this natural-born citizen
never
language.
Went far. I mean, when George Romney was running in '68, there were some beginnings of talk of challenges, but he dropped out of the race so quickly. And nobody, as far as I know, there weren't any serious challenges to John McCain. So it's never gone further than trial court level.
Would you consider yourself a birther?
No. Well, to me, a birther is somebody who has a political agenda or some ulterior motive. I'm just a person who lives in an ivory tower, and I thought this was an interesting topic. I taught every summer I volunteer at Osher, the lifelong learning at Delaware, and I just thought this was a topic that would be fun for my students. So I have no agenda. It was just a fun topic to research, and boy, it's suddenly become very relevant.
Okay, well, Mary Bridget McManaman, very interesting. We are going to probably call on you again should this ever rear its head in court. Constitutional law professor at the Wider University Delaware Law School, Mary Bridget McManaman. Again, we will be calling on you again in the future.
Well, I look forward to it.
Thank you.
WHYY.org/first is the best way to view First when you want. Past shows are there, too. You can also watch Governor Markell's State of the State address online as well.
Have increased the challenges that lie ahead.
Earlier on First, we discussed the Wilmington Improvement Education Commission. A student representative in that group is also the focus of our next story. Johnny Means is the closest thing to a newly formed chess club that we have in Delaware. He's not just playing well, he's using it as a life lesson to keep others out of trouble.
Who has a better position?
This isn't just an ordinary game of chess for 16-year-old Johnny Means. His mother, Joanne, tells us he's on a mission to teaching others the game, particularly young people in his neighborhood.
We live in Southbridge, and we've seen a lot of shootings and just, kids breaking into cars and things like that. And so I, as a parent, didn't let my kids out in this neighborhood.
Instead, Joanne thought it would be a good idea to introduce her children to chess. Her son Johnny immediately developed a love for it.
Every night for an hour, I do chess studying by myself so I can get myself better.
For the past 6 years, Johnny has worked on mastering the game and spends 3 nights a week teaching it at the neighborhood house in Southbridge.
So in chess, there are 4 squares you want to control for a majority of the game. Okay. They're called the center. You want to control them because they let you attack both angles of your opponents, like fortress, and it helps you get back to defending really fast.
Many of the young people are learning the game for the first time, but Johnny certainly has their full attention. He teaches about 20 students and has several goals in mind for each of them.
Just trying to get their ratings up, trying to get more people, trying to push them forward into the chess world and have them learn stuff.
Although Johnny's time here first began with volunteering, he eventually decided to form a nonprofit that's all about chess and at-risk youth.
I always say if we're able to save one child, we've done our part, because having the influence of Johnny, they see him as a role model, they see him as a mentor, they see him as a young black kid from the same place that they are at.
Additionally, what these boys learn here, they can apply to their daily lives.
And I believe chess helps kids think strategically. It helps them think before they react to things. It boosts test scores. Little Johnny's always been above average student, and like I said, I believe chess has a great deal to do with that.
To date, grant money from Disney and support from local leaders have helped the chess club, but Joanne believes their future is even brighter.
Ideally, I'd like to have a center that focused on chess, STEM programs, unique things for kids to get into, but you also want to be able to stimulate your child. And so for me, chess has been a godsend. So I would love to have a center in the city of Wilmington catering to these kids and letting them see that there's more to life than just sports and things like that.
Well, after watching the students play, I decided to get a quick lesson myself. Here's how it went.
Controlling more of the center, getting your pieces set up to attack, and then eventually trying to either get rid of your opponent's pieces or get more support in the center. Because someone, we're both fighting for the center. It's just who gets to it first.
Got that, Nikki?
Not really. Johnny hosted his first tournament with his students right here in Delaware. His goal is to host more and pretty much put Delaware on the map. For more information about the Southbridge Chess Club, go to WilmingtonUrbanChess.com.
First headlines this week. In the aftermath of last weekend's blizzard, Delaware officials hope they can get to work to repair damaged beaches. Now, of course, nature has to cooperate.
If all things go as they normally do, probably by next week, maybe even at the end of this week, we may be able to hit some key spots.
DENREC and the Army Corps of Engineers will do a survey to see what's needed. Tony Pratt says that work might be delayed as the Corps could be called to the Jersey Shore first. Some Delaware businesses in Rehoboth actually found a silver lining in the storm.
I don't think I've ever seen waves that high in my life. But definitely business picked up and people were down here to look at the ocean. So then they stopped in, they tried us for the first time. And I feel like we got a lot of likes on Facebook this weekend.
Check out our storm coverage on newsworks.org/Delaware.
Respecting others is a strong message to teach kids. In Bridgeville, Sussex County, that message is being taken to the next level. With the help of Delaware artist John Donato, the kids of Woodbridge Middle School are creating a mural that helps define the values the school wishes to instill in its students. The project is in its second year, and it's our first experience this week.
The project began last year when we were approached by the Freeman Foundation from Fenwick Island. They were trying to put anti-bullying murals in all of the middle schools in Sussex County.
This is the second year that we've done the mural at Woodbridge. This is a continuation of what we started last year. The project is centered on pride, which is what the school is trying to embody in the students to build character awareness. Pride being preparation, respect, integrity, dedication, and excellence.
And so we asked the students to paint a book spine that would represent those elements of Raider pride and be an inspiration to classmates and visitors to our building of not only what our Raider pride stood for, but of kindness and respect for each other.
The project just represents our school, really. It's about kindness, basically be kind to others, really, and spread the message around.
I liked it because I could say something and also draw and give a good example to people.
The concept behind the mural is to really understand more about what pride means inside the school. This way, when the project's finished, they're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of book spines with every student's individual perspective on pride to leave behind a legacy and a conversation long after the project.
It shows people how to be an example for somebody else. It's just really about being yourself and loving yourself, not thinking about what other people think of you, because at the end of the day, it's all about you. You can't change yourself.
It was a fun project. I think it's about getting to know other people and kindness and to be good to other people.
I think the biggest surprise for me has been how much they really took it to heart outside of this room. They're still pointing to the book spine, they're still talking about it, they're still bringing the character education pieces that were important to them on this day to light in the rest of the school year.
For me, it's the most rewarding thing. My favorite part of this is that I'm not doing the painting, they are. So I'm actually empowering others in a creative process and in understanding more about themselves and other people and situations in a way using art that I don't see happen that often.
The school hopes to continue the mural project with all of its new students next year. They continue to use the message of the mural as a teaching tool during and beyond the school year. You can find more information on artist John Donato and his mural projects when you visit him on the web at artsmac.com.
Next week on First, Governor Markell joins us to talk about his budget and the state of Delaware during his last year in office, and will report on a program aimed at keeping juveniles from returning to prison.
And we have a quick plug before we go. Sunday, February 7th, is the Lewis Polar Bear Plunge for Special Olympics. Our photographer, Paul Parmalee, does it every year, and so if you want to know more about it, go to SODE.org. That is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Avi Wolfman-Arent, Nichelle Polston, and Mark Eichman, I'm Shirley Min. Have a great week.